The Smell of Death After the Tsunami, a Navy sailor's chilling tale. All right, so this story comes from a Navy sailor named Samchai. He experienced something so terrifying that he still can't shake it off. Samchai wasn't the kind of guy to believe in ghosts or spirits, but what he went through changed his perspective completely. Samchai was part of the Navy team sent to help with the aftermath of the massive tsunami that hit Thailand. The destruction was beyond anything he had ever seen. Buildings flattened, cars overturned, and debris scattered everywhere. But the worst part was the overwhelming smell of death. The bodies of those who didn't survive were trapped under the rubble, and the stench was unbearable. Samchai and his team were assigned to a particularly devastated area near the coast. Their job was to search for survivors and recover bodies. It was grueling and heartbreaking work, but they pushed through, driven by the hope of finding someone alive. One day, while searching through the remains of a small village, Samchai noticed something strange. There was a small house that seemed relatively untouched compared to the others. The roof was still intact, and the walls were mostly standing. He decided to check it out, thinking there might be someone inside. As he approached the house, the smell hit him like a brick wall. It was so strong that he had to cover his nose and mouth with a cloth. He called out, hoping for a response, but there was only silence. Samchai pushed the door open and stepped inside. The interior was dark, and the air was thick with dust and that awful smell. He shone his flashlight around, trying to see if anyone was there. The furniture was toppled over, and the floor was covered in debris. As he made his way through the house, he noticed something odd. There were no bodies, but the smell was getting stronger. Samchai reached what looked like a bedroom and froze. There, in the corner of the room, was a small shrine. It was old and covered in dust, but the offerings looked fresh. There were flowers, food, and even a lit candle. But what really caught his attention was the photograph on the shrine. It was of a young woman, and her eyes seemed to follow him as he moved. He felt a chill run down his spine, but he tried to shake it off. Samchai called out again, but there was no answer. He decided to leave and report what he found to his team. As he turned to go, he heard a faint whisper. It was so soft that he almost didn't catch it, but it sent a shiver through his entire body. "Help me." Samchai spun around, his flashlight beam darting across the room. There was no one there. He told himself it was just his imagination and hurried out of the house. But the whisper stayed with him, echoing in his mind. Later that night, back at their temporary base, Samchai couldn't sleep. The whisper kept replaying in his head, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He finally drifted off into a fitful sleep, only to be awakened by a nightmare. In his dream, he was back in that house, standing in front of the shrine. The young woman in the photograph was there, staring at him with hollow eyes. She reached out to him, her hand cold and clammy. "Help me," she whispered again, and Samchai woke up in a cold sweat. The next day, he told his team about the house and the strange experience he had. They decided to go back and check it out together. When they arrived, the house looked even more eerie in the daylight. They went inside, and the smell was still there, just as strong as before. Samchai led them to the bedroom, but when they got there, the shrine was gone. The room looked like it hadn't been touched in years. His teammates teased him, saying he must have imagined it all, but Samchai knew what he saw. As they were leaving, one of the other sailors found something in the rubble outside the house. It was an old journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. They took it back to their base and started to read through it. The journal belonged to the young woman in the photograph. It detailed her life in the village and the strange occurrences she experienced before the tsunami. She wrote about hearing whispers and seeing shadows, and she believed the house was haunted by a restless spirit. Samchai couldn't believe what he was reading. Everything she described matched what he experienced. He felt a deep sense of sadness and fear. The journal ended abruptly, and they never found out what happened to her. To this day, Samchai can't forget the smell of death and the haunting whispers. He swears he'll never go back to that village, and he warns anyone who listens to stay away. Some things are better left undisturbed, especially when they involve the restless spirits of those lost in a tragedy. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.